How successful are total knee replacements? Well, stick around to find out. Hello, I am Adam Rosen, and thanks again for tuning into the channel. I actually started making a short about this topic, like what is the success rate of a total knee replacement? And I realized that I had a little bit more than 15 seconds and even a little bit more than 3 minutes to talk about. But I want to keep this brief and not say that you shouldn't have a knee replacement, but I'm just going to tell you to keep this in mind if you're thinking about a knee replacement. So when we look historically at total knee replacement success rates, there were a number of studies that quoted a 20% dissatisfaction rate. And that's, 80% of people are happy with the surgery, but 20% of you were not. And, if you're a high volume surgeon, let's say you even did just 300 total knees a year, that's 60 patients a year that are not happy. That's a lot, over a 20, 30-year career, the numbers add up. And that's the worst thing as a doctor. We don't want to make anybody worse. And we hate to see someone come in and say, my knee is now worse than it was before surgery. I wish I never had the operation, because there's no way for us to go back and reverse that. Now, luckily, satisfaction rates have actually improved, and more recent studies show satisfaction rates of around 90%. Which still means that 1 out of every 10 of you having this surgery are not going to be happy with the result, unfortunately. So what I wanted to do is make this video to try to give you some ideas to think about if you're contemplating knee replacement surgery, and use that information along with the discussion that you have with your surgeon. If you enjoy this content, leave a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe so you get updates when new videos like this come out. When we look at the orthopedic literature, reasons for patient dissatisfaction, number one up there becomes infection. And luckily, most infection rates are quite low. They should hover around 2% nationally and internationally. Our center and many joint centers like that have much lower infection rates, like less than 0.5%, less than 0.2%. And big high volume centers do have those. So it's no special sauce. It's no one thing. It is choosing the right patients, optimizing the patients, doing the correct surgery, antibiotics, wound care. It's the whole gamut. But infection rates should be low. But again, if you're that 1%er that gets an infection, your life is miserable for a year at least, and sometimes longer, depending on if the infection can be cured. What is the other big reason for patient dissatisfaction is instability. These are patients that have knee replacements that are loose. And this is complicated because nobody in my profession knows exactly how loose or tight to leave a knee. And should it be balanced on the inside and outside, or should one side be tighter than the other? Robotics allow a surgeon to match their philosophy to the balancing the same way a manual surgeon will just balance it by feel. But we do not know exactly where you are supposed to be. And what can happen in some patients is they develop late instability. We put patients in a certain way. Like I have always put knees in fairly snug. I feel that it makes the knee fairly normal to most people, especially if they have a snug knee on the other side. And I have had patients over the years that get extremely loose. And these are patients that required a revision where we changed the plastic insert and went up by like 4 or 5 millimeters. And that is exceptional laxity. That is nothing that I would ever leave the operating room with. So sometimes biology can cause instability, but also a surgeon putting in a knee that is not well balanced, either in extension or flexion or mid-flexion or throughout the arc of motion, is going to cause pain, inflammation, and swelling, and usually, ultimately, result in the need for a revision, usually with that surgeon or a different surgeon. In our literature, we also blame you. So a lot of studies talk about blaming the patient. The patient had unrealistic expectations. The patient didn't do their physical therapy, and we cast the blame there. There are other reasons that we cannot control, meaning me and you, is biology. So some people lay down excessive scar tissue. We call that arthrofibrosis. It's rare, but it can happen, and it results in a severely restricted range of motion. Those patients are going to be unhappy, and sometimes everything we do can't fix it. It's a biological response. And on the flip side, like I talked about before, laxity. Some people just stretch out. We don't know why that is. Like, do you have a connective tissue disorder that led to laxity? But that can happen. Other things that can happen that can cause pain or symptoms, short-term or long-term, are things like blood clots and infections. These are not never events. No one is ever going to have a zero DVT rate or a zero infection rate. But some patients may be predisposed to developing a blood clot because you have a clotting disorder. Maybe you have cancer. Maybe you have diabetes and you're obese and you're a smoker. And I would say all of those things should be fixed or optimized as best as possible before elective total knee replacement surgery. But those three risk factors increase your risk of infection. And again, if you get an infection, that leads to a poor outcome. Now, what are some other things that we talk about in the literature? We know that if you have more than 2 millimeters of joint space remaining on your x-ray, so that's not bone on bone, but still space and more than 2 millimeters, those patients tend to have worse outcomes. And this can be a really difficult discussion with patients that have pain. Um, if you have pain, and if you have used pills that haven't helped and had injections that didn't help and been to physical therapy that didn't help, and maybe you even had arthroscopic surgery that didn't help, if you see enough surgeons, someone is going to tell you, well, you've done everything else, you need a knee replacement. There's no other option. I don't have anything else to offer you. And patients will usually nod in agreement when a surgeon says you need a surgery. And sometimes that surgery is not the best decision for you. It's a really hard discussion that I have with patients. I will tell patients, I understand that you're in pain and yes, you have arthritis. I'm just saying that based on my experience, your arthritis may not be severe enough to see the benefits of a knee replacement, and we don't want to do surgery and make you worse. Now, that might change in 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and for a patient, that can seem like an eternity and you can be in pain. But the hardest thing as a surgeon is actually telling a patient that they shouldn't have surgery. It's actually trying to talk them out of the idea that they need an operation. Because when we see patients have poor outcomes, again, you can't go back in time. You can't put the bad cartilage back in and take the knee replacement out. What are other things that we see in our literature that sort of put the onus on the patient? Well, if you're weak, I see a lot of patients that are weak. You have to get stronger. I can't because it hurts. Well, you have to get stronger before surgery because surgery is going to make you weaker. And then you're going to have a really long, protracted recovery and poor outcome. And I see patients for second opinions that have a fairly, normal appearing knee on x-ray, normal exam, except for weakness. And if we fix the weakness, the pain is improved. And sometimes if we improve the weakness before surgery, if the arthritis was not horrible, sometimes the pain is diminished and the need for a knee replacement goes away or is pushed down the road for a while. And the other thing is very high demand patients and younger patients. And again, it's this hard discussion. If you're 49 and you run, or in my world, you surf 7 days a week and you have bad arthritis, again, you can have the worst arthritis in the world, but because you're young, the demands that you put on your knee are going to be greater than a 65 or 70-year-old. And runners rarely go back to running. And if I have a patient after knee replacement that could go back to surfing 7 days a week, that would be incredible. So we never want to take someone that's activity level here, do surgery, and their activity level is now down here. From a patient's perspective, they had a poor outcome. They are worse than they were before surgery. And this is a hard discussion to tell a patient in pain doing activities that they might wait until their activities are actually diminished because of the pain, because then we can fix not only the pain, but if the activity level goes down, there's the chance that they can increase their activity level from what they had before surgery. And the other thing that fits with that is high range of motion patients. So if you have excessive range of motion, like if you can touch your heel to your butt, those patients are typically going to lose motion. Not all of those patients keep motion. Average range of motions are 115 to 120 degrees of bend. And again, if a patient isn't informed of that and you have surgery and now you can't squat down on your heels, you look at that surgery as a poor outcome. You may not be happy with the result. So those are kind of the things that I talk to patients about, and each patient's different. So I might have a discussion on one of those things with each particular patient. But this is the thing that you don't see in our literature. And this is the thing that you're not going to read about. And I would like to say that there's probably a lot of surgeons that are at fault for the bad outcomes that we see in total knee replacement patients. So what might those be? Well, as a surgeon, I would like to believe that all surgeons are a little OCD and they are all perfectionists. We go to work every day and expect to make everything perfect every single day. And that is impossible because we're human. So sometimes people make mistakes. You might be tired, you might be on call, you might have other things going on in your life. Maybe you're distracted for whatever reason, but you've done the best job that you could that day. But that may have not been your best day ever. And as a patient, you're the patient under the knife. So it's really, really important to choose a good surgeon and choose a surgeon that has high volume and great results on a regular basis, and you up the odds of having a good outcome on any given day. Now, surgeons are always changing things. So there's this big push to different types of approaches. And again, no approach is new, whether or not you're doing a quad sparing like a subvastus or midvastus or parapatellar arthrotomy. All of those incisions and approaches are old, but they always get repopularized. Like in my 20 years, I've seen them come and go, and now they're coming and going again. But you don't want to be on a learning curve, because if a surgeon feels that a new approach is new and they want to learn it, guess what? They're going to learn it on someone like you. So I always tell my patients, ask when a doctor is doing a surgery, like, how many of these have you done? What is your technique? Are you doing anything new? Because I don't want to be on your learning curve. I don't want to be on your 20 or 50th patient. I want to be on your 100th patient of a new technique. The other thing are alignment philosophies, that whether or not you do mechanical or anatomic or kinematic, and I have a whole video on this. Again, nobody knows what the best is. There are surgeons that do one or the other and feel that one was better in their hands than another, but there is no clear, concise answer that says this is the best technique. And again, what I believe is for each individual patient, because if we look at lots of x-rays, everybody's x-rays are different. I believe one day we're probably going to find out that for you, mechanical is best, and for you, kinematic is best, and for you, we're going to alter the joint line a couple degrees, and in you, we're going to match your joint line. So we don't know what the answer is to that. We don't know how much we're supposed to restore the alignment of the joint or the alignment of the leg, and how tight or how loose we should leave the knee. But you again don't want a surgeon that's experimenting on you as part of their learning curve. And it's going to happen to some of you. It's just inherent in medicine that everything new is going to be tried on some patient, and you're going to be one of those patients. But the other thing that I think that is an important part of this surgery in particular, but all surgeries and all healthcare, is patient education. I see lots of patients going into surgery, and especially knee replacement surgery, without a clear understanding of what is coming, what to expect, what they have to do. And sometimes you get docs on the back end that scold patients like they're a child, and you should have done this, and you should have done that, and you shouldn't have been doing this. And I always tell the young doctors that I work with, like, if you didn't tell them what to do beforehand, you can't tell them now that they should have been doing something that you didn't inform them was part of the recovery phase. If you told them and you gave it to them written out and you showed them a video and they didn't do it, yeah, I agree. Then it's on the patient. They knew. But if you're not told what to do and you don't understand what you're getting yourself into, you can get yourself into a hole really, really quickly. And it can be really, really hard to dig out of that hole. And the other important thing is choosing the wrong patient. I do believe that there are doctors out there that do surgery on people because they are a surgeon, and you are in their office. They perform knee replacements. And if you are there with knee pain, you're going to get offered a knee replacement. I always kind of seriously and jokingly say one of the most dangerous people in the world is a surgeon with an open operating room schedule. It's one of those funny things. Like, you don't want to go to a restaurant that is empty, because probably the food's not that good. And on the other hand, if you have to wait 6 months for reservation, it's probably because the place is really good, but you have to wait 6 months. Same sort of thing I find holds true with joint replacement surgeons, that those that are really, really good do tend to have long wait times, which means you may have to wait for that level of expertise. If someone can add you on next week for knee replacement, unless they maybe had a cancellation and you were in a horrible position as far as pain and were cleared for surgery, that's different. But when there's lots of openings, question the volume and the level of experience of that particular surgeon, because this is the classic example that I run into. Is I see patients that have pain, that have arthritis, that have had pills and therapy and maybe had an arthroscopy, and they're coming to me because they think they are ready for knee replacement. And based on their exam and listening to them and what they do and what their symptoms are like and what they've done and tried, I have that hard discussion of saying, hey, look, yes, you do have arthritis. And yes, these things that you've tried so far haven't really helped a whole lot, but you're doing a lot. And I know you're in pain. I just don't think you're ready right now. And again, I might see that patient back in 6 months and x-rays have gotten significantly worse. And maybe now they're ready, or maybe in a year or two, they're ready. But sometimes now is not the best chance. And if you go and see enough orthopedic surgeons and you say, I have arthritis, I have pain, I had pills, shots, therapy didn't work, and arthroscopy, and it made me worse. Every doctor, not every, you're going to run into doctors that are going to say, the only thing left for you is a knee replacement. Let me know when you want to be scheduled. And patients, again, not in agreement because the surgeon said you need surgery. They hear you need surgery. And I see some of these patients back, second opinions. Now they're 3, 6 months out and they're in worse pain. And, I've never, I like to believe I've never said I told you so. But a lot of times I have these discussions like, hey, we talked about this as a possibility and now we're here. So, okay, what are we going to do to try to make you better? So this is not meant to scare any of you that are watching this that are thinking about having knee replacement surgery. I mean, if you're a horrible bone on bone, I always tell my patients, like, if you're using a cane, you waited too long. Like, if you used to walk the golf course and now you're taking the cart, like, have surgery. If you used to enjoy playing pickleball and you can't, have surgery. Like, if you used to walk with your friends and spouse and then you couldn't keep up with the speed and now you basically just stayed home, like, have surgery. Those are all great indications because your quality of life is diminished and you're having pain if you have the identifiable features of arthritis. But if you're one of these people that has pain and your arthritis is not that bad, and there are things that you can do to optimize yourself by increasing your quad strength, maybe losing weight if you're overweight, maybe taking scheduled pills, maybe modifying your activities. Those things may just delay the time for surgery, but it could potentially increase the chance of success of your operation and put you in that 90% or 90% plus satisfaction rate and not in that 10% dissatisfaction rate. And I'll leave you with one caveat. MRI. All day I talk to patients that are 60 plus with bone on bone arthritis because their primary ordered an MRI and they're seeing me for a meniscus tear and they never had x-rays. And I have to go through the whole spiel of why you need weight bearing x-rays and the meniscus tear is a normal finding in an arthritic knee. And there's nothing that we can do arthroscopically, but this is where I say MRIs can be useful. So let's say I see a patient whose pain is out of proportion. They're that patient where pills didn't help, shot didn't help, therapy didn't help, x-ray shows more than 2 millimeters of space remaining. And I'm going, I'm not sure that you're going to be a happy, successful patient after surgery. MRIs can be helpful because sometimes we see changes in the bone, things like osteonecrosis or insufficiency fractures or bone marrow edema. There are changes that we can see in the bone itself below the cartilage, which would explain pain that is severe with x-rays that are not as severe. And that is important to help make the right decision because if the MRI looks fairly normal and the x-rays still show some space, I would be hard pressed to believe that that patient is going to be happy after knee replacement surgery. Whereas the bone on bone patient or the patient who has some space remaining on x-ray, but the MRI looks horrible, like 1,000 times worse than the x-ray did, those patients almost always are going to do great after knee replacement if they do the physical therapy and don't develop a complication like an infection. So you can see why this wasn't a short, it's a complicated topic. It can be a touchy subject for patients that are in pain. But I think it's important because patients should be informed. We talk about informed consent. You should be informed of all the risks and benefits and expectations and treatment options before you entertain a surgery such as a knee replacement, just because the stakes can be so high. And you don't want to go through this surgery and come out on the other end and be unhappy with your decision because there is no going back. So again, thanks again for watching. I'm Adam Rosen. Until next time, stay safe.